Well, hello and welcome once again. Thank you for joining us. I'm Randy Taylor with TaylorMade Leadership, and this is session number 5. This session is about this: focus, grasshopper. This is, again, one of the most important and least talked about elements of personal and professional development that can have just an absolutely profound change. I'll be honest, in all the years of delivering on this session, when I have gotten through it with clients, and ask them at the end, when I'm presenting live to a group in a room, and ask them at the end, how does this rate in area of importance on a scale of 1 to 10? Pretty much every person in the room, every time, will say it's a 10, it's a 12, it's a 15 out of 10. This is something that is just such an issue in my life, and something that I truly want to be able to make an impact on. So again, improving our ability to focus, improving our ability to overcome distraction, and to be here in this exact moment in time. So here's one of the issues of this that I think that, it is so critically important that we accept this and we understand. As powerful as the brain is, it is not possible to be there, lost in thought, thinking about the client, thinking about the weekend, thinking about the economy, thinking about whatever, and be here, focused on whatever is happening at this exact moment in time. Again, as powerful as the brain is, we cannot be at both places, and that ends up being the challenge. And we'll get to it, but when you end up finding out what truly happens to every one of us, it is astounding of how much we are pulled out of this moment in time. This is a question that I think we have all had. I've had this question with family and friends, just in conversation. I've had it with many clients of what causes this, for time to appear to be moving so quickly. When we were children, right, time moved along at a very slow pace, but didn't it feel like as you got older and time started to go on, that the time seemed to speed up and speed up and speed up? And I had this question in a live training session probably 10 years ago about this, and the gentleman put his hand up and said, why is that? I don't get that when we're kids, time seems to last forever. And the conversation I had with him led to the creation of this slide that has been in my presentations for a very long time. And the reality is that it's not that we don't have enough time, it's that we're not here. And so this slide representing this little kid, Bobby, who's 5 years old. And for 20 minutes, Bobby's playing in the mud. And you walk up to him and you say, Bobby, what are you doing? Bobby said, I'm playing in the mud. You say, yes, Bobby, but what are you doing later? Bobby says, I don't know. I'm playing in the mud, right? And so for 20 minutes, the child experiences the mud. You or I would come along and get some mud in our shoe and look at it for a moment or two, and for 17, 18, 19 minutes, we would be there, lost in thought. And there would be that illusion of the passage of time, that it felt like time was moving so quickly. It's not. It's the reality that we are not here experiencing time. If you had that experience before where you're reading a book and you get to the bottom of the page and you read every word, but you have to shake your head and go back to the top because you have no idea what you just read because your brain wandered off. Or you get in the car and you drive somewhere, and you're in the car for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you get out of the car and shake your head and think, I don't even remember driving here, right? So the amount of time that we spend there lost in thought is absolutely crushing. And two of the primary symptoms of not being here in this moment are stress and fear. And all that stress and fear basically says is that I'm here, okay, but I want to be there, because there is where I get to find out. And we end up spending this incredible amount of time living in our heads, mulling over issues, trying to find solutions for what is not possible, because until we get there, we're not going to find out. Is the client going to sign on Monday? Well, I can think about this for the entire week, but until Monday gets here, I'm not going to know. How are the blood tests going to come back on Wednesday? Well, if I'm not going to get the results until Wednesday, no amount of thinking in the world is going to change the outcome of that. Agree? So if I had a situation where I got in the car in the morning and I started to back out of the driveway and I felt the transmission slip, and I think, oh, transmission, that's expensive, and we just, had bills to pay for braces and a lot of other bills, and I don't really have the money now, and I call Frank, my mechanic. This is on a Monday, and I say, Frank, it's Randy. He knows I'm a good client, regular client. Listen, transmission slipping this morning. I got to bring the car in. Frank says, Randy, I can't. Like I'm so backed up. I just can't. I can't see it till Friday. Listen, check the fluid, make sure the transmission fluid is up high enough, and bring it in Friday. I'm stressed, but I'm like, okay, a transmission, is it 1,000? Is it 5,000? I have no idea. So all day Monday, I'm worrying about the transmission, and all day Tuesday, and all day Wednesday, and all day Thursday, and finally on Friday, I bring it into the garage. Frank puts it up on the hoist, drops the pan, does a few things, brings it back down, and walks out, rubbing his hands off, and says, listen, I put it up on the hoist. The bands were just a little bit loose. I just tightened them up. You're good to go, no charge. You're a good customer. And I look at Frank and say, excuse me? He says, yeah, no charge. I said, what do you mean no charge? Do you know how much time I've invested in worrying about this? See, you owe me a bill. What do you mean no charge? And how many times do we do that? How many times do we end up investing this extraordinary amount of thought? Again, the average adult having some 60,000 thoughts a day. And if the majority of the thoughts are not about what's going on in the moment, we're not accomplishing anything, and we're also not experiencing anything, which is absolutely key. One of the great examples of this, can I turn this around? I think that the question for you, perhaps listening right now, if you're easily distracted and you're lost in thought and live in your head a lot, can I change this? Can I turn this around? And the gentleman that you're seeing on the screen right now is one of the great, great stories of the answer to this being 100%. Yes, you can. This gentleman was a student, a medical student at Montreal General Hospital back in the early 1900s. And back in the day, he was someone you would refer to as a nervous ninny. He was stressed out and worried about everything. He was worried about his marks in university, and he was failing miserably. He was worried about the economy. He was worried about making enough money and finding a wife and all of these things. And one day, he was in the school library, and he was looking through some books, and he pulled down this one book by chance by Thomas Carlyle. And there were 21 words in a passage that changed his life. And those 21 words were, "It is not our goal to see what lies dimly in the distance, but to do what lies clearly at hand." And for some reason, those words spoke to him. And he began to work on improving his ability to focus and get out of his head more and more. And he created for himself what he called day-tight compartments, where he called the past the dead yesterdays and the future the unborn tomorrows, and realized that the only moment that he could accomplish anything was at this exact moment in time. And over time, he got better and better and better and better at focusing. As a result, his marks got better. You'll be happy to know that he graduated. He went on to become a physician. He also went on to become one of the founders of Johns Hopkins Medical Center. He became Regius Professor at Oxford University. He was knighted by the King of England. And when he died, it took 2 volumes and 1,482 pages to tell his life story. Sir William Osler, the Osler Medical Center here in Canada. And he said in an interview before he died, he said, you could ask my friends or family or colleagues or anyone that I am of the most ordinary mind. But it's the fact that I got it all those years ago, that the only moment I could create anything was this exact moment in time. And it's a result of that that allowed me to create the body of work that I have over a lifetime. And I've honestly thought about his story so many times, and I've gone, in my head, and I stood behind him that day in the university, and I watched him pull the book down by Thomas Carlyle, and I watched him open it to the passage and read those 21 words. And then I imagine him going, that's interesting, and put it back and paid it no mind. If he had done that, what would we call him today? Billy the dock worker? Right? Probably. And for me, the most fascinating part of this aspect of personal and professional development is this, is that Billy the dock worker and Sir William Osler were the same guy. And if not for his attention to improving his ability to focus, he would have never become the man that we all got to know and to benefit from. So this is not something, again, that has potential for a few people. It has absolutely the exact same potential for you that it did for him. So again, our most important resource that we have in life is time. It feels like we're going to be living forever, and I know that the average, adult being given some 30,000 days, give or take a few, on average. And I keep track in my journaling that I do every day. I keep track of which day it is that today is, and today was 22,156. Those are how many days I've used out of my 30,000. So there is a finite amount of time. I still have lots of days left. There's lots I want to accomplish. But the reality is that it is finite in the amount of time that we're going to be able to spend here and what we're going to be able to accomplish. And understanding and accepting that and taking this seriously, not in a maudlin way, but in an excited way to say, I'm going to get the most I can get from every day from this moment forward. And improving our ability to focus is one of the most important elements of that. So let's talk about the numbers. The numbers that you're seeing here on the screen, quite honestly, is the reality. From a scientific perspective, the average adult, you and I, are awake on an average daily basis, 17 hours or 1,020 minutes. It's scientifically proven that the average adult is only here, focused on this moment in time, no more than 15% of the day. More like 10% of the day, but at most 15% of the day. So if we go to the far end of the scale and say that we are here focused on this exact moment in time, no more than 15% of the day, that means that we are only here a maximum of 153 minutes a day. And when you hear so many people saying, oh, time is just moving so quickly and I just can't seem to get anything done. Well, if we're only here focused on this moment in time for 153 minutes a day, why do you suppose that is? That's not a lot of time, 153 minutes, just over 2 hours. So it is astounding to think that that's all the time that we have. Can we change that and be here more often? The answer is 100%. Yes, of course we can. Because the time that we are there, lost in thought, while it feels like, we can have multiple thoughts going on at one time, not true. That's not true. We, are lost in thought and we are there. And we come back and we focus on this moment in time and we're here. But again, we're changing thoughts in a millisecond, so it feels like we're having multiple thoughts. Back in the 1990s, so many people, unrightfully so, believed that multitasking was the answer to achieve more. If you become good at multitasking, you can achieve so much, they said. And what we have now learned, predominantly scientifically, is that the true definition of multitasking is this: you suck at everything. Right? So being able to focus on one task at a time is absolutely essential. Can we take the 15% and make it 100%? No, of course not. We're going to have distracted thoughts, but can we take the 15 to 20 to 25 to 30 to 35 to 40 and to train ourselves to be able to come back here and to focus on this moment in time on message by internal command? And the answer is yes. To go into the zone and be here on purpose, which again, the impact on productivity is enormous. The impact on quality of life is fantastic. When you're with the client, to be with the client. When you're at the table with your family, having dinner, to be at the table. When you're on the floor playing with your kids, to be on the floor and not be composing a letter in your head or going over your list of things to do and the challenges at work tomorrow. Wherever you are, be there. And so much comes from that. So again, when we are there, and it's 85 to 90% of the day of most adults, so this is no small thing. When we're there, we are lost in thought and living in our heads. Also important to know that 99.9% of the origin of human suffering, it's in the mind. We are constantly challenged psychologically that causes enormous problems in our life. The challenges to think, do we fit in? Are we accepted? Are we welcome? Are we good enough? Are we pretty enough? Are we handsome enough? Are we this? And all of the suffering that goes on predominantly is psychological, those feelings of inadequacy and depression, of anxiety, of guilt and low self-image, of lack of confidence and fear of everything. None of that is real. These are all fabrications within the mind, and yet we act as if they are real. Stress is the number one most reported ailment in doctors' offices. And the reality is that stress is not real. Now, there's a biological process that goes on within the body of ourselves and all other species on the planet called fight or flight. And the purpose of fight or flight is that it is a protection mechanism when we are threatened with something, okay? Then all of the energy and all the blood flow is diverted to our ability to escape. And so all the energy, all the blood flow goes to our arms, to our legs, to our lungs to allow us to run so much faster than we could possibly run. You probably have heard the story of the mother whose child was pinned underneath a car and she lifted the car. How could she possibly do that? Well, it's that instantaneous cause of the hormones that secrete throughout the body that cause this fight or flight syndrome. But predominantly, what this was created for was not dealing with the struggles at work and the deadlines at work and the challenges and the unruly boss and the relationship problems at home and bumper to bumper traffic and bills and credit cards and all those things. That the fight or flight response was not developed for that. Okay, it was developed for this. Right? This was developed tens of thousands of years ago to allow us to escape. This was a physical protection mechanism that would allow us to get away from the tiger. And therein, lies the challenge for so many people, is that it's as if we are being chased by a tiger all the time. And this tap stays open of all of these steroids that are pumping throughout our body and causing all kinds of medical conditions. We never turn that off. And 99.9% of the time, probably 99.9999999% of the time, I don't know where you live, there's no tiger. Yet our bodies are responding as if there is one. And again, this fight or flight syndrome that causes stress, that causes all kinds of issues, was designed as a very, very short fix. Here's a blast of energy, get away from the tiger, settle down, go back to normal. But in the stress-filled world that we live in, again, predominantly by living in our heads, the challenge for us is that that tap stays open all the time. And the impact of this is extraordinary. 43% of all medical conditions are being related to stress. Some 90% of all doctor's visits related to stress, of heart disease and of diabetes, of depression, and so many other conditions that are being caused by the fight or flight syndrome that, again, has nothing to do with the tiger. It has to do with the tiger between our ears, of all of those errant thoughts that have nothing to do with this moment in time, of what's going to happen at work tomorrow, of what's going to happen with the economy, if I don't pay that credit card off, if this goes on. I mean, we're constantly living in that fight or flight space, and we all have the ability to change that. The more that we are here, the more that we can accomplish, the more that things change, the more that we can have, the more that we can enjoy, the more that we can experience. Everything that comes about through positive creation is going to come about by the more time that we are spending here immersed in this exact moment in time. So the question then, this all sounds good. I know the philosophy is exciting, probably somewhat depressing, that 85 to 90% of the day we are not here, we're lost in thought, not producing anything, not experiencing anything. So the question then, what is it that we have to do? What is the process in order to change? And when I began going through the research on this, because again, my job is to identify an issue, a problem, and then provide a solution with verified action steps that will produce an end result that will improve on the situation. So what do we have to do to change this? So in my research, the first element that I came across were past teachers, right? Who are the people who are the greatest at overcoming distraction and being able to improve their ability to focus? Well, some of the monks. Some of the Tibetan monks around the world have some of the most incredible abilities to go into a meditative state and stay there. They go into something which is called a state of no mind, where they can completely shut off thought and sit there and be conscious and have absolutely no thoughts for up to 45 minutes. So this seemed to be a likely first place to look. Find the people who are the greatest at something and then go in and study them and see if there is application to what it is that we're talking about for you and I to be able to improve our ability to focus and overcome distraction. At one point in going through some of the research, I found that they took 8 of the monks and they put them through an experimental process where they brought them into a testing facility and they wired their complete heads with electrodes. And they hooked these electrodes up to a 3D imaging system on a computer so they could monitor brain function. And so they had these 8 monks set up and they had them all wired with the things on their head and they had them sitting there, just normally talking and being in conversation. And then they said, okay, we want you to go into a meditative state. We want you to focus. We want you to focus on love. We want you to focus on compassion. And what they noticed was absolutely astonishing, that they saw things light up in their brains, the scientists said, that they have never seen before in the frontal lobe like a Christmas tree. And they said that one of the monks, some of these monks, by the way, who have up to 40,000 hours of practice meditation, they said one of the monks, one part of his frontal lobe, which is the happiness center, lit up so much, they said that he had to be the happiest person in the world. And in this test study, they also got a group of people like you and I and put them through the study as well and said, okay, we're going to test your brain before and test your brain after. We had a conversation, we're talking, they hooked the electrodes up and they monitored the activity of the brain, and then they asked the people, the regular people, to go into a meditative state and think about only one thing and focus and meditate. Nothing happened. Nothing at all happened, nothing changed. And so what they realized then in coming from this was that focus is a learned skill. It's something that the monks did not have, but they learned to become better at. And so the first step in my research in this was to understand that it's possible for us. Through the proper process, it is possible for us to improve our ability to focus and for us to improve our ability to overcome distraction. So then in going through this and working through this and studying more about the monks and their forms of meditation, often in very, very secluded locations in a very controlled environment with no exterior stimuli, basically sitting on a cliff on the edge of a mountain in the Himalayas with a butterfly going by in a bright sunny day and being able to go into a deep meditative state. And that was how they developed this skill. And so I started working through this and thinking about this and talking to clients about this and started examining, but where do I want to be able to have people to impact their ability to focus more and overcome distraction more? And I realized this, is that I didn't notice in any of my research monks doing this, having a minivan full of kids, taking them off to gymnastics and school and basketball and picking up dinner and getting to work on time and doing all of these things. And so the reality and what the end game that I came to on this was this. What what did monks become good at doing? They became great at solitary, sedentary meditation. They became good at being monks. But again, I don't know any of my clients that I'm working with, and it may be you, maybe this is your dream in life, and I wish you all the greatest in the world. It would be fascinating. But unless your goal in life is to be a monk, then here is where I suggest we're going to have to learn the skill. This is where we're going to have to develop the skill to meditate in a conscious state, to be here in this moment in time when the world is happening around us, to be able to be here, focused on this moment in time at the breakfast table, at work, in a busy meeting, stuck in traffic, waiting at the airport. All of those, so-called true, real elements of life, that's where life is happening. And so that's where we're going to have to develop the skill. And so I realized, as good as the monks were at doing what they did, this is really not applicable to what you and I have to learn to become more focused on this exact moment in time, today, where we are and where we're living. And so the beginning of this process, there's two questions that I want to pose to you that have, very, very specific outcome on the vast amount of thoughts that the average person is having each day. So again, the average adult has some 60,000 thoughts a day. 85 to 90% of those thoughts are not about what's going on in this moment. It's about everything else, but it's not about this moment in time. And the first kind of thought that I want to talk to you about is the type of thought that can have absolutely no impact on the outcome. So it's the thought of, what's going to happen with the transmission? Is it going to be $1,000, $5,000? What are the blood tests going to be? Will the client sign? All of those thoughts can have absolutely no impact on the outcome. True? If I stayed up, 8 hours a day worrying about the transmission, would it have changed the outcome of the transmission? And the answer, quite honestly, is no, absolutely not. And so when you catch yourself having those thoughts, here's question number one. Stop and ask yourself this question. Yes, I don't know about the transmission. Yes, I don't know about the blood test. Yes, I don't know about the client signing. But stop and ask this question. But do I have a problem with anything in this exact moment in time? And 99.999 times repeating, the answer is going to be no. You mean right exactly now? Yes, now. Well, no. Unless you wrapped a car around a tree, 3 seconds ago. We don't have a problem now. We perceive we have problems now. But the reality is that when you ask this question, you find out the truth, which is, I don't have problems, I perceive I have problems. So that's the first form of thought. The second form of thought is the type of thought that requires action. The type of thought that says, I need to get this done. So you're driving in your car, you're sitting in a meeting, you're at your desk, you're at the dinner table, you're laying in bed. Oh, I've got to call that client. Oh, I've got to take the dry cleaning in. Oh, I have to get the car serviced. Oh, I've got to schedule who's going to drive the kids to basketball this weekend. So those are thoughts that require action. And it's interesting that those thoughts will continue rolling and rolling and rolling around in our head, right? You keep hearing yourself say, don't forget the dry cleaning. Don't forget to find out who's picking up the kids. Don't forget to get the car serviced. And we keep hearing that voice over and over again. Here's a question. Why? Why do we keep hearing that voice? Because again, every time one of those thoughts come up, it's not accomplishing anything, but it's taking more of those 60,000 thoughts a day that are supposed to be meant for this moment in time. So here's the only reason we continuously remind ourselves about that. Here it is. It's because we don't want to forget. That's it. That's the only reason we keep hearing that audio loop go off in our head. Call the client, get the car serviced, take the dry cleaning in. The only reason is because we don't want to forget. So here's the solution. The second form of thought, when you have a thought that requires action, stop and immediately do something about it. Take it out of your head and put it somewhere. For me, that somewhere is a recording device on my smartphone. I have a recording device. If I have a thought, I want to call that client, or I've got to get the car in to get serviced, I put a voice message into my phone, gone, done. Now I never think about it again for the entire day. There's no reason to keep playing that loop in my head to pick up the dry cleaning, because that's not the most sexy thing to be thinking about all day long. Now I've committed it somewhere. Now I can forget about it, and I have a process in the plan. Every day at the end of the day, I'll take out my phone, I'll listen to the messages I left for myself and go, oh, yep, dry cleaning, get that done on Thursday, and this goes here and that goes there, and ask my wife who's doing basketball, and we're done. And it cleared up an enormous amount of space in the central processing unit between my ears. So between those two things, number one, the type of question that can accomplish nothing, stopping and asking the question, but is there a problem in this exact moment? No, dismiss it, come back. The second, this requires action. So I take it out of my head, I put it somewhere, and now I'm good to go. And now I have the ability to clear up so much more of that time for me to be able to do this. If you looked at the thought that goes on, and we typically only have three different thoughts. Thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, and thoughts of the moment. And we're constantly pulled generally in the past and future direction, which doesn't allow us to spend time in the car in the middle. And as you can see, the old antique car up on blocks does not have the ability to move. The futuristic car that we see at car shows every year, there's no motor in it, doesn't move, sure looks nice. And then the car in the middle, which is the car of today and is the only car that actually moves. So if I were to say to you, I'm going to spend an hour in the antique car on the 401 with a speed limit of 60 miles an hour, how far would I go? The answer is, well, you wouldn't, because there's no motor. All right, so if I spent an hour in the futuristic car on the 401, the side of the road, no motor in it, how far would I go? You'd go nowhere. Okay, so if I spent an hour in the car in the middle that actually has an engine, and I would be driving at speed limit. So over the course of an hour, how far can I go? 60 miles, 100 kilometers. Great. So if tomorrow I said, I'm going to spend 3 hours in the antique car and 2 hours in the car of the future and 3 hours in the car in the middle, over the course of the 8-hour day, how far will I go? Well, I'll go 300 kilometers or 180 miles. Okay, that was pretty good, but I'd like to go a little bit further the next day. So the next day I'm going to take 1 less hour in the antique car and 1 less hour in the car in the future and put those 2 hours in the car in the middle. Now how much further will I travel? Mathematics says I will travel about 200 kilometers further by taking 1 hour out of each of the cars and putting it into the car in the middle, which equates to almost 25,000 miles a year, the distance around the entire Earth, by merely taking 1 hour out of each car and placing it into the car in the middle. And this is an exact mathematical representation of the opportunity of life. Because if I'm in the antique car and at the beginning of the hour, the red car goes by me at 60 miles an hour, and then an hour later I decide I'm going to get in one of the red cars, and I jump in the red car, now I start traveling at 60 miles an hour. Well, guess what? That red car that passed me an hour ago is always going to be 100 kilometers ahead of me. 10 hours goes by, 1,000 kilometers. And I will never, ever, ever make up that time. That's the chilling part of looking at the mathematics and the analogy of this, because that red car that passed me an hour ago, you know what that was? That was my potential. And that part of it is gone. I will never get it back. Yes, I can try hard tomorrow, but when that potential is gone, it is gone. And I'm never going to get it back. And so are we going to start, doing all we can to claw back more time, to be in the car in the middle, to experience more, to produce more, to have more? That's the only answer, because every moment spent in the antique car or the car in the future is taking us absolutely nowhere. And that is our potential that is slipping away. So if we looked at an example of this, and we're talking about much more of an opportunity than just this, but let's look at this as an example. 2 hours of increased focus to say, okay, so I'm going to be here on the planet, holding the earth down for 24 hours today, and I will tomorrow if I'm fortunate enough to be here. But if I increase my ability to be here, focus on this moment in time, 2 hours more tomorrow, let's look at what could I accomplish in that time relative to being lost in thought. And again, this is a big deal because 85 to 90% of the time we are lost in thought. So not that hard to find 2 hours of increased focus time. So here are some examples of what we could actually accomplish. That in 2 hours of business development and prospecting, I could contact 30 potential clients and or leave messages, or a total of 6,000 additional contacts a year. If you're in business, right, how would that change your business practice to make 6,000 more contacts than you're making now? Just asking. 2 hours of reading a day. In 2 hours, did the research on this, the average person can read about 240 pages. That is that number of books per year. Absolutely astounding. How much could you learn and how much could you grow by reading that number of books a year? And 2 hours of cardio. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're going to go out and invest in 2 hours of cardio every day, but it's fascinating to look at the numbers. Okay, 2 hours of cardio a day would be 1,500 calories, would be 121 pounds a year. Each pound is made up of 3,600 calories. So when you burn 3,600 calories, you lose a pound. And if you did 2 hours of cardio every day, you would lose 121 relative pounds this year. So, again, these are insular examples of seeing if you just did this with your increased focus and time. But I wanted to make the example and to show just how powerful this is and what an extraordinary difference that this can truly make in your life. So in going through this process, I wanted to begin now with the exercise required to grow the muscle, to become more focused, to become that person more capable of overcoming distraction. Again, the monks became tremendous at being monks in a controlled, quiet, isolated environment, but you and I live here in this world. And so this process that I have developed is called this, which is conscious meditation, training the mind continuously and repetitively over a sustained period of time, every day, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, training the mind to be here more, trained on this exact moment in time. And so what is this about? It is about creating a new habit. And habits are not created in a day. I can't make the decision tomorrow that I'm going to be, the person that completely organizes my house every morning before I go to work, because it's going to take me time in order to develop the habit to become that person. You have no idea how happy that would make my wife. It's not on the list right now, but just as an example of what could possibly happen. So creating a habit is something that is going to take time, but again, it's the compound effect of what we do and what we don't do over a sustained period of time that ends up producing extraordinary results. And so here is the process of conscious meditation. Conscious meditation happens wherever you are. So as you're sitting and going through this session right now, wherever you are, I want you to pay attention and to look around and go through this process with me of what it is like to be conscious in this moment of what is going on. So this process is to focus on what you're seeing, focus on what you're feeling, focus on what you're hearing, and then physically focus on everything that is around you. Fill your mind completely with everything that is in your environment or exactly what you are looking at right now. Right now, I'm staring at a clock across the office on the wall. And right now it is 18 minutes to 4. And so I could tell you exactly the dimensions of the clock and what the makeup is and what the numbers look like and how the hands are and what the exterior rim of the clock is. And so I am absolutely focusing 100% on what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, and filling my mind with that process. And here's the magic of what happens in this. When you do that with conscious meditation, it takes up the space for errant thoughts to fill that spot in. When you are consciously filling your mind with what is there in this moment in time, distracted thought doesn't have a home. It can't be there. You can go through this process to be present at this moment in time, sitting with a client, to completely and absolutely focus exactly on every word the client is saying, and where the client is and where they're sitting and the environment that the client is sitting in. When you're driving home at the end of the day, when you're sitting at the dinner table with your kids and your family, and you're having a conversation, and you're absolutely filling your mind with everything that is going on in front of you at that moment in time. Distracted thought doesn't have a home. And this is something over time, every time you do it, you'll get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better, and the time will stretch on and stretch on and stretch on. And I can tell you, this is something that just feels amazing. By being able to shut off distracted thoughts of being there, lost in the moment, and being able to be here on purpose, it is one of the most enjoyable and fruitful skills that you could possibly learn. But again, this is going to be a process that takes time. The process to be present at this moment in time. So all of this information will be in the download folder in your notes along with this session. Print this off and learn this process backward and forward of what is involved in being present. And then the next step in this, and the final step, is to do this. Repetition is the key. And so once you have learned the process of being present, all I want you to do is to schedule, and pretty much everyone has an electronic calendar, is to schedule just a buzzer reminder in your calendar 4 times a day in week 1. And at different times, maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning, and once at noon, and once at 4, and once at 8. When the buzzer goes off, that's the reminder. It doesn't require any work. It actually will improve your life, because that buzzer is the reminder: come back here, process what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, come back and fill my mind with exactly what is going on around me at this exact moment. And then it goes off again later in the day and later in the day. So week 1, process the reminder 4 times a day. In week 2, have it go off 6 times a day. In week 3, have it go off 8 times a day. And it's a muscle. Over time, that muscle will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And your 15% will go to 20%, to 25%, to 30%. And you will get to a point eventually where you will be able to, on your own, through willpower, turn it on and off. And it's a tremendous skill to be able to have. I absolutely promise you, this is one of the major wins in personal and professional development that you can possibly invest in. But the difference between wanting and having is it's doing. And so I can't encourage you enough to make certain that you learn the process, number 1, and then schedule those reminders in, number 2. And over time, you'll just begin to feel that sense of being present creeping in more and more and more. And then send me an email, give me a call, tell me what that feels like to have that kind of change in your life. So again, that's it for session number 5. I'm Randy Taylor, and on behalf of everyone here at Tailor-Made Leadership, thank you very, very much for joining us. Have an amazing day, and be well.